I am Jeff Ado. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon.
He made me do that.
I forced him to howl, you guys. I always say I never force people to howl. I forced this fucking guy to howl, and I'll do it again. I do it again and again. My guest today is my very dear friend, Ron Weinrich. He is a leader in the work of transformation for his business. I know him from doing a lot of landmark work, which is also personal development, transformational work. And he was at my wedding. He's very good friends with my wife. He's in town for about a week now. We're going to get into why and what for, but I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Me too.
It's a privilege and an honor.
Mine more than it is yours.
Well, that's true. I think we can all agree on that. So first off, we should start with the election, right? Donald Trump just got elected president of these United States. There are a lot of people who are bummed about that, who are mourning, who really wanted Kamala to win. She did not win. And, you know, there's some concern, for sure on my part about, you know, my friends and family who were really gunning for her to win. And then she didn't, to make sure that they're okay, you know? And so I want to talk about that. Like, what's your take on that as a Israeli American?
Oh, as an Israeli American.
Or just as you. So we should maybe give a little background, right?
Yeah. So I was born in Israel, raised in the United States until I was 15. Totally American childhood. Then went over to this, you know, my parents who were Israelis moved back to Israel. So I went like end of middle school, high school. I was in Israel, drafted in the military, became a tank commander in the Israeli military. Was injured pretty severely in the Israeli military. Suffered a spinal injury there. Then had to like rehabilitate my life, and I studied business, and I also became a musician, moved back to LA. To make a long story short, I spent about half my life in the United States and half my life in Israel, kind of back and forth, and I'm a proud Israeli and a proud American citizen. And if World War III, God forbid, was to break out and Israel wasn't a part of it, then I would see what I could do in order to support the United States of America, and vice versa. So I feel really privileged that in this experience of life that I have, I got to be a part of, I think personally, the two most magnificent nations on the planet. And I'm kind of blown away by that.
Beautiful. That's awesome. And so so from that perspective, how do you see the kind of the election falling out in terms of like how people are feeling about it and how to accept it, you know, particularly if they lost, so to speak?
So I think that you know, if I put aside whatever my personal opinion is about the election and the candidates and whoever, I mean, here's the thing that I think the election is an incredible opportunity for people to look at a really uniquely human phenomenon, which is, well, there are actually two that really jump out at me when election season comes. The phenomenon is that the day of the election, everyone is super excited, hyped up. Everyone's, you know, like I literally 3 days before the election, I sat with a very, very smart, high-powered human being who I look up to incredibly. And he said to me that he is off the walls excited. Why? Because Kamala is going to win 100%, landslide, no shadow of a doubt. Trump is totally off the rails, like
toast.
It's easy. So happy. The future is so bright. And an hour prior, not even an hour, like on the way to that meeting, I was listening to the radio to like this conservative media outlet. And those people were off the walls, happy. It's going to be a red wave. Trump's going to take it. Absolutely no question. And then I go into lunch with that guy and I'm like, wow, Look at that. Isn't that incredible that there are like two completely alternate realities? Everyone, these people are happy, those people are happy. Everyone's convinced that they got it going. And then what happens is that the election actually gets called. Mm-hmm. And in one sliver of a moment, life completely transforms for those who lost. Life becomes like dark, depressing, and the future is gone. And then that sends them into a automatic perpetual like cycle of, okay, now I'm on the bottom, so now I have to like fight. Now we have to be strong. Now I have to do everything I can. You know, it's like, unfortunately, I'll use a weird analogy. It's like, it's kind of robotic, or it's kind of like a bug. You know, it's like you turn on the light, and if you turn on the light, the moth goes, ooh, a light, and he just goes, he flutters, and he goes towards the light. You turn off the light, and then the moth's like lost. People are kind of like that also. You know, like something in our mind switches. Nothing in reality changed. Absolutely nothing.
Right.
I'm still married to the same person. I still have the same job, the same everything. I look the same. I feel the same. Everything is the same. All that happened is that my view of reality was challenged, and now I'm like a ball of complete disgruntlement. Mm-hmm. I get angry at the people around me faster.
Yeah.
I have no control over my emotions and my mental state. It's kind of an amazing phenomenon. Same thing goes for the inverse, for those who won. Now the future is unbelievable. Oh my God, I'm going to start a new business. Mm-hmm. I'm going to propose to my girlfriend now. She's like, what the hell happened 3 minutes ago?
Right.
In fact, I have a good friend from Louisiana who's like a staunch Republican. And years ago, this was in the Obama days, he always told me, he's an older guy, he always told me, I want to come with my wife to Israel. We've never been to Israel. And all the time I would say, come to Israel. I'll take you around. I'll show you. We'll go. No, never. Like, their whole lives, people in their 70s, they never came to Israel because of the situation, because security. Obama was the president, okay? Then Trump wins the election. And the day after the election, he gives me a call. And he says, we're going to buy tickets to come visit you in Israel.
Wow.
Like, what happened?
Right.
But suddenly a sense of security dawns on the person. And he's coming to Israel. And he came to Israel,
Yeah.
So, see, but no one questions that phenomenon. It's like a really amazing phenomenon. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is this thing that's called being our inherent self-righteousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
pride.
like
our pride.
Our pride, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Our pride and just being right. I mean, I think it's a little bit different than pride. When I say being right, I mean like that when I drive somewhere, even though I'm going in the wrong direction, I always have the experience like I'm in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Until I suddenly, until you get like a bump, right? And then you're like, oh God, I'm in the wrong direction, right? But until that happened, until I took the wrong turn or the GPS said, redirecting whatever, or until the election is lost of my candidate, or until, your wife says I want a divorce, or like you're always convinced that you're good. Mm-hmm. And it couldn't be farther from the truth in many, many, many cases.
Yeah. So you're saying that there's a lot of people that wanted to be right about Kamala being president, and then now she's not president, and so therefore they find themselves wrong, or there's something wrong with the world, or there's definitely something wrong with the country because they voted for this other guy who they have lots of judgments against. Yeah. And so therefore life itself is wrong. And what are we going to do? We got to fight back.
Totally. And by the way, and I don't want in this conversation for anyone to think like I'm talking or pointing about people that voted for Kamala, that something's up with them or that they were wrong, because right. I'm talking about the phenomenon. I'm talking about the phenomenon that everyone, whether you voted for Trump or for Kamala, everyone was convinced that their point of view is right. Not that I have a point of view.
Yeah.
And I experience life such that it's always right. I never have a point of view and it's wrong.
Right.
I mean, even a criminal has a point of view that he's right to have killed that person.
Yeah. Or stolen from
Or
them,
stolen
or
from
whatever.
right.
Which we're going to get into some of that later. But
Yeah,
anyway,
and that's the thing, you know. That's the issue. This righteousness that's inherent in the human experience, and like in reality, what it leads to is exactly what you pointed to: is that if I'm always right, then anyone who does not vibe on my wavelength is always wrong.
Yes.
And wrong,
stupid.
And stupid, exactly, and inferior.
Yeah, and inferior.
And bad. That's bad for the world, and it's bad for humanity, and it threatens me, and it threatens my children. And now I have to live my life in order to correct their wrongness,
right,
and make them right.
Yeah,
like me, and that's the world.
And let's just go back to being clear here, because there was a winner and a loser here, and it was 51% to 49% or something very close, really. Ultimately, what happened could have swung the other way. If it would have swung the other way, the Trump people would be saying the same exact thing.
Exactly, yeah.
They would have the exact same perspective. And the reason, and you're right, it is very much about being right. The reason that I call this being right pride is there's a distinction about pride, right? Pride, if I'm proud of you, I'm proud of you for showing up the way that you do in life, right? And that's a real thing. I feel that way. Like, you're a champion in my world. I love you. We can get more into that later, and we will. But there is pride of like, I am proud of who I am, and I am better than other people. That's pride, the sin that is spoke of in the Bible.
I got you.
And so being right, it is true that everyone wants to be right because everyone is proud and they can't see the humility of seeing the other person's perspective, regardless, like outside of right and wrong. Like that Rumi quote, there's a field beyond right and wrong. I will meet you there, right? He's a Sufi mystic. He knows what he's talking about. There is a place beyond right and wrong where you can really see and be compassionate for the other person's perspective, regardless of what your perspective is, even when it seems like they're fucking so wrong. You can see beyond that to a world where, no, for them, they're right, and that's where they are. And I can still see that they are a good person and that I don't need to like look down on them. And also, how gross is it? How disgusting. When you really get present to the pride of being better than those other people, be it the Trump supporters or the Kamala supporters, when you really get present to the disgustingness of what it means to feel superiority to those people, it's just hideous. It's so gross, and it's so separates us from each other and creates this polarity. And I really feel like it's toxic to the soul and toxic to the ego to see that way. And the result is, like what you're saying, the light goes off, the moth is lost. The light goes off, the moth is just like, what am I going to do now? Oh my God, I don't know what to do. And those people are so bad, and it would have been the same way if you would have flipped the election results. But we don't have to see it from that perspective. There's an opportunity to really see, well, okay, that's what happened. I got to play my part. I cast my vote. I had my say. It didn't go my way. And now this is the way that it is. Yep. What am I going to do now? I'm going to out my mother. She is a Kamala supporter. I don't think that's a bad thing at all, by the way. She's my mom. And if you got a problem with that, well, we got a problem. Don't mess with mom. Anyway, my mother really wanted Kamala Harris to win. She believes in her. She thinks women should lead, whatever. She has all of her reasons, and they are good reasons why she wants that. And I was really concerned when this happened that, she was going to like go off the rails and be really upset. And I called her and she wasn't. In fact, my stepdad answered the phone. He was like, "Oh, you just called to make sure we didn't commit Trump suicide?" And I was like, yeah, that's why I called. And he was like, no, we got way more courage than that. And I was like, okay, good. And then we talked for a while, and I talked to her about it, and she was like pretty calm and collected about it, which was really gratifying for me because, you know, she's older and I don't want her to spend her life stressed out. But to the point, there's an opportunity, particularly if there are those of you who are listening who are like, oh my God, I can't even believe this. Accept the things that you cannot change, right? This is something you cannot change. Here we are. Just accept it. Let's move on. What can we do from here? What are you going to do with your life? How are you going to look at find possibility in your life now, regardless of the outcome?
I wanted to say something more about that. Most of us are just like commenting about life rather than having a conversation that's like literally about how we're going to impact life and move the world forward. Meaning, I'll turn my life into Kamala this, Kamala that, Trump this, Trump that, the Republicans this, the Democrats that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to use my breath, my energy, everything I got to talk about all that stuff rather than actually just being like, here, whoa, what can I actually impact and touch and change in the world to cause it to be the way that I'd like it to be.
Or make it better, even.
Or make it better, right.
For myself or
and instead,
people.
we just spend our time talking about the same circular stuff that's proven itself as completely insignificant. No one cares. It's actually what causes the mess to begin with. And you know, we might want to change the song.
Yeah.
Maybe we should change the damn song already.
Write a new song.
And write a new song and dance a new dance. And let that thing go, because last I've checked, it's been the same damn song for God knows how many years. And it's also so boring.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like funny. It's funny every election. It's all the candidates. They always say, it always puts a smile on my face. So like, this is the most important election of our time. Mm-hmm. Every election is the most important election of our time, which by the way is kind of true because that's what's happening right now. That's all we got. So this is what's happening. So it is the most important election of our time. In any given moment. But it's like, okay, in 4 years, it's going to be another one of those. Mm-hmm. And within those 4 years, we can still move the ball downfield in the direction you want to move the ball downfield.
Right.
And instead of doing that, we get up in the stands and we talk about, look at how the ball isn't moving downfield. You know, someone should really move the ball downfield.
I can't believe where that ball landed.
Yeah.
Can you believe where the ball is right now?
That quarterback should be fired. The captain of the team should be fired.
Yeah. And the defense just, wow, those guys suck.
And those people need to be in jail.
Yeah.
And he cheated on his wife.
How dare they? Right?
The kicker cheated on his wife. That does not move the ball downfield. Mm-hmm. None of it.
Yeah, exactly. It is, I mean, you know, I'm not a huge sports watcher for anyone who knows me. Not that I don't like sports. I actually think that there's so much value in sports, and I feel like on some level sports reduce violence in the world because they give us this like tribal sense that's like innate to humanity. And so that, you know, I have a theory that like, well, it's possible that like that reduces the amount of violence and warfare because people, instead of joining a gang, they join a football team. So I do think that there are tons of things that are super valuable about sports, playing sports, et cetera, participating in teamwork. I think it's great. And on the other side of it, and also there's something about rooting for a team and watching your team win and being excited for when they win and sad when they lose. But also there is something that's like kind of pointed to what you're saying, where you're just armchair quarterbacking something that you have absolutely no control over, and all you're doing is commenting on it, which is not changing the way that the game is played at all. It's just about you talking about it, and you're spending your breath and energy and time just talking about it instead of doing something yourself, creating your own sport or going off and taking up pickleball or whatever sport that is that you find that's valuable, and or writing something or making something that's going to impact positively other people, or figuring out, oh, you know what would be really nice is if, you know, we were talking earlier about the Make-A-Wish Foundation, you know, it'd be great if like people who are dying really like had some sort of way that they could, you know, say publicly what their wish is, and then we could go and see if we could find out if we could make that happen, which is like kind of the story of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, right? Yep. That guy, that's what he did. And now there's a Make-A-Wish Foundation. that wasn't there before. And it's incredibly inspiring and super fruitful for the people who are participating on all sides of it. And it's an act of service, which I think also goes back to a popular theme in this podcast, which is, the great joy of serving others and what it means to truly be of service, and how being of service in life is a means of really raising your own consciousness by virtue of getting out of your own head and doing something that's authentically valuable for other people, knowing that you have something to give.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, man.
So are we done?
Yep. That's a wrap, you guys. We're done. Thanks for tuning in to Lunacy.
I do want to say something about the sports thing, which is brilliant what you said. But the funny thing is that like in the Coliseum, sports happens, like there were gladiators in a Coliseum killing each other and the crowd goes wild. And in sports, we have people playing sports against each other and the crowd goes wild. But both of those things are like, let's just say what it is. It's like forms of entertainment that we're entertained by. They totally touch on that tribal thing, like you're saying. Mm-hmm. But we know that those things are for entertainment.
Right.
Politics actually have an impact on the way that the world and humanity goes. Like it's like a trim tab. You know what a trim tab is? Like it's there's
on the boat.
Yeah. So for those listening, there's a boat has a rudder, which has it go left or right. But if the seas are like really strong or if the boat's really big, then the rudder might not have enough strength to turn. So there's like a mini rudder on the rudder called the trim tab. And that little thing makes it easier for the rudder to go. So the politics, it steers the big ship in a little direction, in a certain atmosphere. And that also happens inside of a Coliseum. That whole thing, it happens in a Coliseum. And it's like a fight to the death. And people still don't get it. Like, people don't like getting involved, but we love to sit, with the sunflower seeds and the hot dogs.
Yeah.
And yell.
And the beers.
And yell.
And the yelling has an effect, too, on the team. I watched the Rams play the Seahawks last week. Mm-hmm. And it was a really, really entertaining game to watch. Like, the ball got turned over. The Rams intercepted a pass in the end zone and ran it back for a touchdown. It was a 103-yard run for a touchdown. Guy had never gotten an interception before. It was like a Rams record for a touchdown run. It was a big deal. It was very exciting. And they were at the Seahawks stadium and they were getting booed so hard. They were getting booed. And they still managed to pull it out. And that was exciting, even though the pressure was on and it was harder for them. So the fans are actually having an effect. And ultimately the effect is because the Rams won, that all the Seahawks fans are going home bummed out and depressed. And by the way, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with watching and enjoying sports. And I have a good friend who's like a professional commentator on sports. And I think that's great that he does his life that way. That it's awesome. And it's really important to him. And he gets really attached to things, but also that's what he's about. He's in that world and he's actively participating in a way that people consume and is, in service to them in some way. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I think what I'm also pointing to is there is a trap in getting hung up on being an armchair quarterback versus being the quarterback of your own life.
Exactly. Yes. I was about to say, if your team loss doesn't give you the permission to be a jerk to your employees or your boss or your wife or your husband, mm-hmm. and to be just a crap human being.
Right.
It doesn't give you permission, but for some people it does give them permission.
Yes.
That's and that is just as ordinary as dirt. The moth to the light kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Then you're just not being a human being. You're just a low form of life, and I don't mean that in as an insult.
It's more like you're running a low program.
Well said. Yeah, you're just that's primitive programming.
Yeah, you're running
not different than a bug.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're behaving that way. And by the way, again, there's nothing wrong with bugs or being a bug or running those programs. all of us do. All of us run those programs. It's just a matter of catching oneself in the act of running the program. When I see that I'm running that program, I'm talking, for me, I'm talking to my wife in a certain way. Like I've been getting really present to, I love my wife. I'm married. If you're married and you don't fight, please let's talk. I don't know how that goes. So sometimes we fight about stuff, and I'm always looking at, and like that's natural and normal. Last fight we had, we kind of both gave ourselves permission to just go off the handle. It was so cool. Like I was like, okay, if you keep talking, I'm going to get really mad. I'm just letting you know that. She kept talking, and I was like, okay, here we go. And now we're yelling at each other, nothing like super mean, nothing like you're a fucking asshole or you're whatever. None of that stuff. We don't go there, but just we're angry and we're fighting. And that was really cool. So anyway, we're growing. That's one of the things that I'm really committed to, is like having a peaceful, harmonious relationship with my wife. And also noticing that so often when I really get upset, like if she interrupts me, watch out, dude. I get so mad, and it's like, and so what I've been noticing is like, oh, that's a program that I've been running since childhood, when I would get interrupted as a little kid at the dinner table, because I was the youngest by like 5 years, and my parents would be talking with my sisters, and then, like inevitably I would say something and they would laugh at me because it was funny, because I'm a kid and I don't really understand what they're talking about. And then I would be like, should I be happy about the fact that they're laughing? But no, it's embarrassing. And they interrupted me, and now I feel a lot of shame. And what's that all about? And like, right? It's this age-old program that's been in my life that goes back to core wounding from when I was a little toddler. So then I see her interrupting me, and I'm like, wait, hold the phone. Wait, stop. Wait. Don't run that program. Don't run that program. And I've been moderately successful at that process of stopping and saying to her, hey, I'm really triggered right now. This trigger comes from childhood, when I got interrupted, when I felt like nobody listened to me, nobody cared about me, Yep. And I'm making it mean that you don't care about me and that I'm stupid, or you think I'm stupid. And I see that I'm reacting this way by getting really mad. And I see that really there's just inside, there's like this sad, sorry to say it because I'm old, but there's this sad little boy that feels hurt. And so I just want to tell you that inevitably, if I share that with her and we get to that level, she's like, oh God, I totally see that. And I see where you're coming from. And I just want you to know that I love you and support you. And, this may sound like a little airy fairy or whatever, transformational to people. It fucking works. It fucking works.
Absolutely.
And fine, if you want to pretend like you don't have childhood trauma and that's not how the ego develops, because that's how the ego develops. That's how we all come into being, is by shitty things that happen to us. But so for me, it's like once I see, oh, that program is running, then I'm like, oh, I don't have to run that program. And don't be a robot. I don't need to be a robot. I can claim my sovereignty as an adult man who survived that thing that happened 45 years ago or whatever. Yep. Okay. And I can stand in this moment and be present and really like see that and acknowledge it, but also like come from a different place, So yes. And, I think there's a question that goes like, it's like when we talk to people and we tell them, be a higher person, or be sovereign, or discover, like in the moment of that fight, or in the moment. Okay, so if you wanted Kamala to win and she lost, come up to someone like that and be like, listen, you should really be optimistic about the future. Good fucking luck, dude. Right? Yeah. Like it's not happening. No. It's not happening. No.
Right? So the question there,
there's a mourning and a grieving that actually needs to happen for those folks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. I'm saying maybe. Maybe there's another possibility. Okay? Like here's a question. And this is, I think, where the gold is I think in this conversation that we're kind of like conversing and observing, talking about life, right? Sharing about life, we already established that being upset when the person who you wanted elected lost the election, being upset about that is as ordinary as dirt, right? I mean, it's just as natural can be. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if that's ordinary, then there's a question. then what would extraordinary be? How could I be that would be like, okay, that happened.
Right. And by the way, ordinary as dirt doesn't mean wrong. Let's just clarify.
Yeah,
but
I just mean
it's
like,
normal. That's what people do. They're going to be upset.
Ordinary,
The team lost.
whatever. Just
If that's ordinary, then what would be extraordinary?
What would be extraordinary? And I don't know the answer to that. But, like, now, by the way, and also saying grieving about that is also kind of ordinary. Just like everybody who would lose an election would kind of grieve about that. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about... The same thing could be said about someone who dies, by the way. There are people that they can grieve for 10 years. There are people that won't get over it their whole life. There are those people, that you can see an inspiring documentary about or inspiring thing about on YouTube where the funeral of the person is a celebration of their life, and they're just glowing and they're thankful and they're celebratory. Oh my God, my mother was the most incredible, thing in the world. Now she passed on to the next life. That when you see that stuff, the reason why we like watching that stuff is that stuff is fucking extraordinary. You go, oh man, that is a different kind of world that person is in. Mm-hmm. Maybe there is a possibility of also like you don't have to grieve when things don't go your way, or maybe when your sports team loses or when your candidate loses. Maybe when you're in a fight, the question is, wow, look at this. This is just so ordinary. This is just my programming. This is me again. This is just doing that same old thing. What would be the extraordinary thing to do right now? And then to like, even if your thoughts and your feelings disagree with it, to try doing something else. I had an ex-girlfriend who used to have nastiest fights ever. Okay, like it was really, really toxic shit. And I'll never forget in my life that after she would say really bad things to me, and I would scream at her roar at her like a lion, and we would just explode. I couldn't contain myself, and I would leave the house, and then I would come back after a few hours after I cooled off, and she would be even more upset at me than I was before I left. And then I remember saying, "What the fuck do you want me to do? What do you want me to do in that moment?"
Yeah. And
she said, "I want you to hug me and hold me." And I looked at her like she's insane. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget. I was like, this woman should be put in an insane asylum. How my feelings would not ever allow me to hug her. Like when I want to tear your head off, you want me to hug you? Mm-hmm. Only years later did I realize that that's like
she was telling you the truth.
She was telling me the truth, and that's what she wanted.
Totally straight, authentically.
Yeah,
that's what she wanted.
Yeah, when you want to kill me, or when I want to kill you, please hug me and remind me that you love me by hugging me, and don't leave. Mm-hmm. That I only got that years afterwards. See, but that would be. Imagine how extraordinary that would be if every fight with your spouse or with whoever, the moment someone, like when it was as tense as possible, you just hugged each other and you didn't say anything. Yeah. That's freaking extraordinary. And it's so counterintuitive. It just goes against like everything you feel in the moment. But that's incredible.
But that's extraordinary. Yeah, I mean, I've had actual things like that happen with Christine and I, particularly when I've been able to like catch myself. Like it's not quite the majority of time yet, although knock on wood, that's what we're going for, friends. All right. But it has happened where she said something, I caught myself being triggered. I immediately was like, yeah, just the way you said that like didn't totally work for me, or like what's, I was able to disassociate from the trigger and see objectively like what was going on, and then say to her, how do you want to be supported right now? And then get an authentic answer, which was something like that, or something like, I want you to hold me, like really, or I just want you to hear what I have to say, which is mostly that's where the juice is just people really want more than anything else to be heard and understood and validated that they're not crazy, that their experience of life actually makes sense, and that I can see that. If I fully hear someone and their, whether it's my wife or anybody, and I see their perspective and really actually get them to the extent that they see that I got them, that they feel internally, wow, he really gets where I'm coming from. That creates so much healing for that person and for me as the person who's giving my listening. And also it creates peace. So that's really interesting. And I want to get into that because you have a lot of history of doing that, and you have a story that I think is pertinent to it. The other thing I wanted to say is, I do believe that grieving is necessary. For me, there's no question that grieving is necessary. My dad died. Wow, I grieved about that. I still grieve about it. And when I grieve about it, I just acknowledge, okay, that's where I am. I allow myself to cry about it if that's what's up for me. I play the song that I wrote for him. Thank you, Dad. And I just kind of connect with him. He's right. I'm looking at him right now. I have a photo of him as a baby with my grandma right above my shoulder over here.
It's funny that he looks the same as a baby as he did when he was, right?
Yeah, he really does. He looks so smart. Anyway, love you, Papa. Thinking about you. So I think grieving is absolutely important. And to your point, asking well, how do I make the extraordinary choice? To me, it's a contextual question. How do I rise above? It goes back to what we talk about on this show a lot, the love operating.
The love operating system.
The love operating system. Thank you. That's the Israeli translation. The love operating system, which is the contextual question. How do I love more? How do I love more in my life? How do I give more love? How do I receive more love? How do I create more love? But also, how do I rise above is another contextual question that one can ask themselves in the ashes of losing the election, which is such a big fat deal to people. Like asking yourself, how do I rise above? That's, I think, or how do I love more? How do I create more love in the situation, given what's happened? How do I be there for people? Maybe how do I understand the other side, the other perspective, the other point of view? How do we work together here? How do I reduce the polarization and the what do you call that when you're just constantly looking down on people? The supremacy that exists on both sides.
Asking any question like that, in order to ask a question like that, you'd have to get present to that thing we talked about in the beginning, which that maybe I'm not right. Like I have to give up my righteousness and my pride in order to even ask a question. Mm-hmm. Because righteous and prideful doesn't ask questions. It tells people what it thinks.
Yeah. And it's not listening.
At
all.
Right. So
even when being talked to. And that's the shitty thing about relationships is you could talk to somebody till you're blue in the face and fucking have all of the solutions painted out for them. And if they just did these points, they would never suffer again, and or they would get what they want from their career, and or whatever the fucking problem is. I've got it solved for you. But they're just not listening because they're stuck in the being right.
Right. And
prideful.
And that's why the predecessor to this whole thing, I think, is just getting present to, wow, this is amazing. No matter who I am and where I am in life, I always perceive life that I'm right and other people are wrong.
Yes.
That's what an incredible phenomenon. I'm like a robot. Mm-hmm. I'm just programmed that way. Lots of people talk about, when they're upset, that they need to meditate. Yeah. And I'm not against
it. Me too.
Yeah. And meditation is great. I think, though, that, and this is just my personal opinion, I think meditation is a lot of times, people observing themselves and their mental state and their emotional state and all that, and quieting the conversation, so that you can be more open and present to what's going on outside, actually, spiritually, whatever. I think, though, that what would really boost people's potency of their meditation a lot of times is if doubting reality was a part of that practice. Where when I meditate, I quiet myself down and I look and I observe it. Wow. Isn't it incredible that that every time we fight, it goes the same direction? I'm right and she's right, and we're both right, and it never goes in any direction. Wow. What a phenomenon. This is amazing. Then something like an opening opens up. Something becomes possible, and I can start asking questions. Because anyone that says that really is with, she's convinced that I'm wrong, and I'm convinced that she's wrong, and she's right and I'm right, and it never goes the way we want it to go, then that stuckness presents a question, like a natural question.
Yeah.
Which is some version of, well, hell, what do I do?
How do I get out of this?
Right? And
how do I leave?
Exactly. Now, see that, but what do you mean, how do I leave?
Like, how do I break up with this person? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the how do I leave is the righteous, prideful says, how do I leave? But if I'm just present to the absurdity of my life.
I see what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Wow, this is just so fucking absurd.
Yeah.
I can't believe how absurd this is. I can't believe how I keep on it's like endless. Is this really what? This is ridiculous. This is just ridiculous. It's funny. It's even funny. If you start laughing, in the right place. This is amazing. What a phenomenon. I'm just like, I'm off. Then the next question that arises is like, okay, what do I need to get here? What do I need to, that question opens up, something like that. And then new action can be taken. But until then, we're just trying to fix ourselves. I'm going to meditate. That person's a jerk asshole and I hate him. I'm going to meditate to pretend like I don't feel that way. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I hear where you're going and I love what you're saying. And I would say that, there are a lot of meditation techniques to really get to the absurdity of reality.
Yeah.
And in fact, just sitting down and meditating in and of itself is doing that because you get present to your fucking absolutely crazy monkey mind brain that's constantly going nuts and wanting to do all this stuff. And then you just have to sit and listen. And if you sit and listen for long enough, you find love and you find peace and you see beyond this bullshit attachment that you have to whatever it is that you're trying to be right about. So I personally, I hear what you're saying. If people are using meditation, I guess, as a crutch, I find it critical to myself and my own spiritual awakening, if you will, and connection because, well, for me, it's prayer because it is prayer. And there's no getting around it's prayer. If you don't think it's prayer, sorry, it's prayer. Even as defined in the Bible, that Jesus was like, there's 4 versions of prayer. There's petition for something I want, penitence for something I'm sorry for, gratitude for something I'm thankful for, and non-image, non-verbal prayer, which is meditation. That's the highest form of prayer. So, I do find that it's absolutely critical. And also there are ways of, just in the moment seeing, oh, wow, I'm so attached to being right. And I need to give up the right to be right.
Yes.
Here. If people everywhere, myself included, give up the right to be right, then there's a real opportunity for peace on this planet in a way that we have never seen before, because that immediately opens us up beyond our own egotistical, parasitic thinking, that's constantly grasping and searching for things that we can attach to so that we can define ourselves as having this position and being this type of person. If I am actively giving up the right to be right and searching for what's the meaning and how do we move the ball forward, as you say, and how do I do something that's going to actually contribute to this other person or this situation, or maybe it's that I need to get out of this situation and not be with this person anymore because this relationship is not serving them and it's not serving me. So I need to create a new relationship with somebody else. Maybe it's that. Who knows what it is?
Could be.
But looking at life through the lens of how do I give up the right to be right opens up a whole world of possibilities.
And what you did, a great demonstration of that, if we circle back to the issue with the election, is what you did with your mom. Even though she's your mom, so you inherently, you love her and you care for her very much and you want to know she's okay. But you stepped outside of the bounds of the ordinary and you called up your mom and you just you made sure that she's all right. Mm-hmm. That's extraordinary. If you wanted Kamala to win, if you're watching this and you wanted Kamala to win and she didn't, and you're really, really, really upset, what would be a really extraordinary thing you could do? I don't know. Either call up one of your other friends who is really upset. But don't go down that road of, can you believe it?
Yeah,
The country is messed up. And now we gossip. We need to leave the country. And all these idiots, these disgusting people. How could people...
Thailand.
Yeah. No, don't do that. On the contrary, say, okay, well, isn't this amazing? Look, I mean, this came out of nowhere. I'm really upset about it, but let's do something good. Call up one of your Trump friends and be like, you know what? I never expected this to happen. I just want you to know I still love you. And whatever the outcome is, nothing actually changed in reality. Everything is exactly the same. I love you. Let's get coffee together, okay? Let's have a conversation about how we can come together and have this next year be extraordinary. I don't know.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Something like that. Exactly. And for the record, I didn't vote for either of those candidates. Oh, I'm out on myself. Nobody knows who I voted for, but maybe you do. And it's not important to me. Like, what's really important to me is that we all come together. And what I told my mom was, I was just like, look, I just want you to know that I love you and I support you and I'm here for you. And if you want to come to my house and chill out and veg out and go on like a media cleanse, where you don't watch the news at all for like 2 weeks, which I think, by the way, would be great for her and probably great for everyone. Then my house is available to you as like a house of healing, which is what I'm creating. Which also, and she totally got it and she was very moved by it and I love my mom. So there you go. To your point, then also the whole media thing, like that's something else that concerns me, which is like just how much fear gets poured into all of this and people just take the programming and they're just like, yeah, everything that they're saying in the news is right. Whether you're watching Fox or you're watching MSNBC, it's like, it doesn't really matter. And also, super annoyingly, the algorithms of everything are now tracking what you like to watch. And so they feed you more of that, which makes us even more polarized. It'd be great if the algorithms did it backwards or gave you some independent person who's like moderate and in the middle, who's like, how do we see beyond this from both sides and work together, But instead, that's not how it works. It's just building and building more fear, because that locks people into watching the device, to just being in fear, and then we're more easily controlled as a species.
Again, programming and the brain and mind of a moth.
Yes. Right.
And they're going to turn on the light here, and everyone's going to go, ooh.
Yeah.
And they're going to turn it on there. Ooh. Like, that's it. And you got to get that. You got to get the absurdity of the whole damn thing.
How quickly and easily we're absolutely distracted from everything by pretty shiny objects.
Yep. And the illusion that we actually think. No one thought. You hear something, you see a headline, and it's not like someone sees a headline and they go, wow, I should put in like half an hour of thought into this and think of the different aspects and implications that this might have, the impact it might have. No one thinks like that. It's like you read a headline and then boom, that's it. You're off the rails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
exactly.
Is there really any thinking going on? I don't know.
Step outside the box. Yeah.
I don't know.
So going back to this, the importance of listening and really getting people where they're at. I'd love it if you would share your story about your mom that happened recently. If you think you can kind of do that in an efficient way.
Yeah. About 8 years ago, my mother rented out an apartment that she owns.
This is in Israel.
Right. Mm-hmm. To a person who she didn't run a background check on him. Turns out that the guy was in jail for many, many, many years. Like a bona fide criminal who has hurt lots of people physically and financially and dealt drugs and all kinds of other happy stuff. Mm-hmm. And the guy's been a real pain in her butt for many years as a tenant. Okay. And
not surprisingly.
Yeah. But a brilliant guy. Like, if he had a different life, he could have been one of Israel's top criminal attorneys. I'm telling you, he is a brilliant guy with an incredible verbal ability, incredible charisma and presence, mm-hmm. And you know, when you're with him and you talk to him, you really are astounded by, wow, this guy's no joke. Okay. Long story short, he pretty much intimidates my mom into, over the years, into, you know, he causes all kinds of trouble with the neighbors and the this, and he doesn't pay the HOA and all this monkey business. And every time he's confronted on it, he says, you know, it's none of your business. Get out of my business. I pay your check on time. That's it. And my mom doesn't like confrontation. She just kind of stepped away from it. 8 years later, she decided to sell the apartment. Okay.
Which seems like a good way to get out of the situation.
Right. Yeah. Because totally, she didn't know really how to deal with it. And truthfully, she wanted to move to, you know, like she wanted to buy a new apartment for herself. So she wanted to, you know, sell this one and use the money to buy that one. Well, bottom line is she wanted to sell her apartment, which she, of course, has a right to do. And his contract ended at point X. And she sold the apartment
On a certain date.
And between when she sold it to the time when it needed to be handed over to the new buyer, there were 4 months. So he decided one-sidedly, unilaterally, that he was such a great tenant for the last 8 years that he is going to live rent-free for those next 4 months, because you're not going to be renting it out to anyone anyway, so I'm just going to live there, and that's it.
Right.
And too bad. And not only that, when I find a place, since you're screwing me and you're moving me without my consent about it, and you're torpedoing my life, I'll move into an apartment when I find an apartment that suits me at the price that suits me. So I'll just be looking in the market for whatever. And the date comes by when, you know, it's decided that he needs to leave by a certain time. And if he doesn't leave by that time, then there's a $100,000 fine that my mother gets hit with.
Right. And she can't do anything about it.
She
can't force him to leave. And Israel doesn't do that where they like come kick you out of the apartment.
Yeah, like you can, but it takes half a year and, you know, lawyers and stuff like that. Anyway, and this guy knows this. So, and he gets offended by my mother, because she yelled at him that he's a crook and all this. And then he decides that, okay, I'm going to stick around and I'm going to do everything in my power to screw you. And you're going to get hit with that $100,000. And even if I do find my dream apartment, I'm going to make sure that I leave the day after you get hit by the fine, because I want you to suffer for the way that you spoke to me. You disrespected me.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was the thing that we were dealing with. And at some point, I told my mother, everybody out, let me step in. I want to negotiate with this guy. And I came to it as if I'm dealing with a hostage negotiation, because it is.
Right.
It's not a business negotiation. This is a hostage negotiation. It's like he could have taken a person hostage.
Well, he's literally holding your mother hostage for $100,000 that she'll have to pay.
Right, exactly.
Even though she's not, yeah,
and he's, you know, and he's a criminal mind, and he's hell-bent on what he wants, and even though it's completely self-destructive, because he's got 2 little girls in his house. Yeah. And a wife, and it's like, what are you doing? But he's such a powerful human being that you cannot contend with him. And in the end, speaking of that, what we talked about, what's ordinary, what's extraordinary, I came about it thinking, wow, everyone is so right that this guy is a total crook and a criminal, including the justice system. What if he is right and we're wrong? What if my mother really did torpedo his life? What if he really does deserve to be rent-free for 4 months in that apartment?
You came at it with that perspective.
Yeah.
Wow. This is your mom. See, let me just pause for a second in the story. I don't know that I could do what you did on the face of it if somebody wronged my mother that hard, because I have such an attachment and a love for my mother. So already we're in the land of extraordinary, that you're coming at it from the perspective of maybe he's right. Now, would you say, so just to clarify for people who are listening, you're coming at it from that perspective because you know in your heart this is going to be the only way that you're actually going to see through to the solution?
Well, yeah. I mean, he in a normal, ordinary world, my mother within a week, this was, by the way, on a week timeline. In 1 week, my mom is going to get hit with $100,000 fine.
Yeah.
That is inevitable. It's going to be, that's what he said he's going to do. You don't play with this dude. That's it. So, okay, so now the question is, do I roll over and, and show my belly? What do we do?
So you go into the conversation with him saying, well, what if he's right? Essentially.
Yeah, I said, like, what if I actually heard all the stuff that he says?
Yeah.
And actually got what he said?
Right.
What if she actually disrespected him?
Yeah, okay.
When she yelled at him, he said, well, I'll tell you what he said, because I eventually met up. I scheduled, I had to fly over the United States. This was in Israel. The next day I had to fly out. I told him, listen, let's get together at 11 p.m. at a 24-hour coffee shop that was full of people, because he's a
hothead.
He's a hothead. I said,
and he's dangerous.
And he's dangerous, and we'll do it in a coffee shop full of people. That way,
can't get too bad.
Yeah. And lo and behold, I'm sitting in a coffee shop with this guy, 70-year-old guy, 70 by the way. And the man is leaning in face to face with me like this, screaming, waving his hands around in the middle of a coffee shop, screaming.
Talking.
Your mother is a fucking whore. She's less than a hooker on the corner of the street in downtown fucking this. She is a disgusting piece of shit of a human being. Who the hell? If she was a man, I'd fucking take her apart. I'd throw her out my fucking window right now. That's how he's talking about my mother in my face, yelling. People in the other tables around there just, like what the hell's going on, right? And I was sitting in front of him, and all I was telling myself was like, I have to get his communication that what he's saying is right. I happen to know that my mother is not a prostitute, right? If my mother would hear, she would say that she would love to be, but no one's willing to pay for it. She would say that.
Tell your mother she's got a place on my show.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I sat in front of him, and again, it's the absurdity thing. You're sitting in front of the person, and I'm thinking, wow.
Yeah.
How fucking incredible is this? Look at the emotion. Look at it is real for this guy. Yeah. So it is real for this guy.
Yeah.
So I say to him, I have to tell you that I got the yelling and all that stuff, okay? And I got that you're really emotional, and you were probably really hurt and disrespected by what my mother said to you. And probably if someone spoke to me that way, the way my mother spoke to you, I would probably feel the same way you did. And in that moment, he broke down crying in the middle of the coffee shop.
Wow.
He burst out. Yeah, he burst out in tears.
I wonder when the last time he cried was. Probably a long time. Anyway, so he's crying. Now he's crying.
He's crying.
Goes from yelling.
He goes from yelling to crying, and then
authentically crying.
And then he goes, "She stood in my house in front of my 2 daughters, and she disrespected me in my own house in front of my own 2 daughters. I lost a son, and I promised I would never be in a situation where I don't take care of my children, and they see, whoa, this wellspring came out.
Stuff. Yeah, okay.
There's a whole world of pain for that guy.
Right. Wow.
And then he yelled at me again. And then, and he said to me, if I need to leave on November 6th, I'll leave on November 7th just so that I can fuck her and that she gets fucked with that. She learns how to not to disrespect people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
then I sat there and I thought to myself, wow, what an incredible phenomenon. How does one deal in this situation? And then I asked him, I have a real weird question to you. He goes, sure. I say, when's the first time you had this experience in life where you were so disrespected and you felt like someone conned you and just torpedoed your life? When's the first time? And he said, when I was 13. Immediately. When I was 13. I said, what happened? He says, I grew up in the worst neighborhood in Israel. It was like the worst of the worst. there were 2 bicycles in the neighborhood, mine and this other kid. And I was like the king of the neighborhood with my bike. And some son of a bitch stole my bicycle and he repainted it. And then he got all the other kids to like in cahoots, and they told me that his dad bought him a brand new bike and that it wasn't mine. He's like, but then I scratched off the paint and I saw my paint underneath one day. And I got that everyone I was like the laughing stock of the neighborhood.
Wow. Yeah. All these other kids his whole community is against him.
Yeah. And
Okay. Yeah.
And he was just, and I said, so what? And he said, I taught him a lesson. I said, what did you do? He said, I stabbed him 12 times.
Wow.
And then they sent me off to some, like some closed, I don't know, penitentiary.
Did the kid die? Do you know?
No, he didn't die.
Oh, that's good.
He didn't die. But he was stabbed like with like punctured lungs and like not stabbed in the shoulder, like stabbed in the body,
Right.
And this is what this guy's life was at the age of 13. And he said, and I did it 25 more fucking times because that's what happens when people fuck with me. If you disrespect me, like in the middle of the coffee shop.
Right.
Right. And then I said to him, I couldn't even imagine what your life was like. It sounds to me like you had a hell of a life, and time after time, every time someone disrespected you and hit you, life just fucks you again and again.
Yeah.
And no matter where you turn, you get hit again and again. And boom, the guy bursts out crying again.
Wow.
And he says, I don't know what happiness is. My life is depression since I was a little kid. I know nothing else in my life. There's no other way to live life than the way that I live. If people knew what I've been through and what I've done, this was it. We left that conversation that night. I actually offered to pay off. I told him, listen, go get another apartment. And even if that apartment's more expensive, but it's the apartment that you love, get it. And I'll pay the difference for a year. That was my offer. And he declined my offer. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't need your handouts. I don't need this and I don't need that. And we left. But when we left that, he gave me a hug and he said, just so you know, I fucking hate your mother, but I love you. And anything you need from me, I got your back. Blah, 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 okay, great. We left. I called my mom the next morning.
That's so huge. He gave you a hug.
Yeah. I called my mom the next morning.
I fucking hate your mother, but I love you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the next morning...
This is so surreal.
Isn't it surreal? It's like the craziest thing ever.
I try to put myself in your shoes and in the situation, I'm just like, I am not... I don't know. I can't... I'm not that fucking transformed.
Well, Ron. In the middle of the conversation, I made
impressive.
I made an agreement with him. After he cursed my mom and all this, I sat there kind of, I let the emotion go and I said, listen, dude, I just want you to know that you can say whatever you want about my mom and I won't take it personally, okay? Like, you can say whatever you want. I'm not offended by it. That's your shit with her. Here, in reality, it's you and me. She's not here, so I have one request from you. When you talk to me, don't bring your shit with her into my conversation with you, okay? And he said, I could do that. And 2 minutes later, he said, because your fucking mother has a da-da-da-da. I said, hey, you promised me that you wouldn't bring that shit. Okay, keep going. And then 5 minutes later, she disrespected. I said, dude, what do we talk about? We said, listen, I'm trying to talk with you here, but you're talking with her and she's not here. I want you to talk with me.
Wow.
So that went back and forth a lot of times. I call my mother up the next morning. She says, how'd it go? I say, I failed. I made the offer. I had a crazy conversation with the guy. We were there for 2 hours. I didn't accomplish. I said, Mom, just accept it. In a week from now, you're going to lose $100,000. This is just how it is. Just take it. Yeah. Okay. You made a mistake. You let this guy in 8 years ago. Be responsible. That's it. Mistakes happen. Then I get on an airplane. I fly to Cyprus. I missed my flight in Cyprus. I'm sitting in a coffee shop, really, really pissed at myself that I was an idiot and I missed my flight. And I get a call from him. And I pick up the phone. I go, hey. He says, listen, I thought about it. Let's do it. Let's make the deal. And I told him, I'm really happy for you. I'm really proud of you. I'm really, really happy that you accept, that you're open-minded enough and flexible mentally enough that you could accept my offer. And I said, did you find an apartment that you really love? He says, yes. And it's going to cost another, I don't know, $700 more a month. Okay. I said, great. That makes me so happy that you're going to move to an apartment that'll be an upgrade for you and your family and your girls. That's awesome. And he said, thank you. And I said, yeah, okay, good. Well, I promised what I promised. I said, I'm going to cover a year of your rent. So, you guys move out before the 6th of November. And the next day I'm transferring you the money. You have my word of honor. If you don't get that money, you know where I live, come burn my house down. And he said,
which is a big thing to say to somebody who would do it.
I mean, he would do it anyway.
Yeah.
So, right. So I might as well.
You might as well call the bluff in advance.
Totally. So anyway, the whole thing worked out, man. So a 2-hour-long conversation and $6,000 got us $100,000 off the hook.
Wow. And all because you were willing to fully listen to him and get where he was at.
Totally. If I had that life, if you heard the stories of that guy's life, the experience of that man's life is just horrible through and through from early childhood. He just got hit again and again and again and again and again. And he doesn't have the tools to get out of it.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. But also, there's no question that he also experienced some positive transformation. Granted that you created for him. The fact that you were able to get him to move out by the time that he said he was going to move out, collect the keys and everything, and that you transferred the money, like that's a huge breakthrough in his life in terms of like being his word and really doing the honorable thing outside of what he wanted to do. So then, it's not just about, you're not painting it this way anyway. I just want people to be clear, like, not coming away from this as like, oh, well, Ron tricked him into doing this. No. Ron, what you did was you really saw the world from his perspective. You really got him. And then this thing happened that you weren't even expecting to happen. He offered, granted you made him an offer, but still like he offered to take that offer when there was that wasn't going to happen. That was that result, the result of what you did with him was not going to happen. There was no way that it would happen
ever
at all.
No negotiation strategy book would be able to say, you have to say this, then you have to do this.
Yeah, none of that.
No lawyers. Don't even talk to me about, like lawyers, what should we do? What does the justice... No.
Yeah.
No, this is a humanity issue. That's what it's about. It's a humanity issue. And it has no rules. That's why when I came into it clean, people said to me, what are you going to say? I said, I don't know. All I know is one thing, that this guy never wins in life. He always loses. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've noticed, but when little kids lose at a game, at a board game, what do?
They get mad and pout and cry.
They throw a tantrum.
Yeah.
And the ones who are like angrier, then they turn over the board game.
Yeah.
And they fuck it up for everyone.
They flip it.
They flip it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So that's the guy. Mm-hmm. Life fucks him. And every time he gets fucked by life, he throws the board game and he fucks everyone. Mm-hmm. So the negotiation then is about, how do I leave this guy with an experience that he actually won?
Right.
I want him to win. I actually want him to have a win in his goddamn life that he suffered. Sitting in jail for God knows how long.
Right. 30
Stabbing
years.
people, destroying people, stealing from people. Like it's all a child, flipping over the table. Mm-hmm. How about he wins for once, like without criminal activity, without, delinquents.
Yeah. Without punishing other people for the traumas that he's suffered.
So I let him win.
Amazing.
And then 2 days later, he calls me up. I was waking up in the morning and get a call from him. I think to myself, oh God, and pick up the phone. He drives a taxi these days. And he says, when are you coming back to Israel? I said, I don't know yet. I don't have a clear date. So he says, well, let me know when, because he says, you're great. I can't tell you how happy I am. I want to pick you up from the airport and drive you home.
Spooky.
Spooky as hell. I said, I'll let you know. All right. I do not know. That's
yeah.
right. Yeah. So
By God first.
yeah. This is my next saga. Right?
Yeah, right,
on the next podcast.
On the next podcast, Ron confronts the murderer.
So you were hanging from a ceiling. How'd you get out of that one?
Okay, so let's talk about the RV. The reason for your being here.
You've been helping me renovate this really cool 34-foot long monster of an RV, a motorhome that has a wheelchair lift in it. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, whoever's watching this, you can't see it, but I actually get from place to place with a wheelchair, which is part of my injury from my tank commander days. Side note, when you're visiting other countries, make sure you're on their side. Otherwise, it doesn't work out well for you. I love traveling. I love big nature. I love what the kind of nature that the United States has to offer. It connects me to myself, connects me to life, connects me to God.
Yeah.
And when someone has a disability, it immediately becomes like a huge, huge mountain of a burden to get off asphalt or pavement. Because life gets hard. It's hard to move. You need a shower with water temperature. You need a proper bed, because if you don't sleep in a proper mattress, then everything hurts the next day. You need a toilet to sit on, because you can't go like camping and, poop in a bucket.
No, there's no digging a hole.
Yeah, there's no digging a hole. Like all that stuff is off limits pretty much for people that have a disability, whether it's someone like in a chair with CP or ALS or you name, or fibromyalgia or whatever it is, people that have chronic pain, or people that are old, the elderly people that they just don't feel safe walking on anything that's uneven, you know, and as we get older, we seek comfort. Same thing with disabilities. Life is so goddamn uncomfortable that doing something even more so uncomfortable is like a hell no.
Right.
And so nature becomes off limits to people that have a disability.
Can I comment on what you're saying a little bit, just really quick?
Please.
Because I'm really inspired by you as a human being. I love you, and I just am. It's in awe of the fact that you are in a wheelchair, and I've never, not even once, ever seen you be a victim of that, which I think is absolutely extraordinary. Now, I don't know. There may have been a time in your life, and there probably was, where you were a victim of it. I can't imagine that that's not the case. But in the time that I have known you, in the last 8 years or so that we've been friends, I've never seen you ever become a victim of it, or be a victim of it, or act like there's something wrong here, or there's a problem. And in addition to that, I've also witnessed and been around to see, how challenging things are, like getting from the wheelchair into the car. It's not easy, right? It requires a lot of effort, focus. You got to think. Now, granted, you've done it a million times, but still there is an extra effort that you have to do. Taking a shower, going, all these things are significantly more challenging because of the fact that you're in a chair, and you don't allow yourself to be a victim of it because you're not that type of person, which I think is extraordinarily beautiful and inspiring and role modeling for other people who happen to be in a similar situation. So, just to paint that picture a little bit, that's how it goes, because so many of us who are not handicapped in some way don't really know how it is. And even though I'm saying this and I've witnessed it, I still don't really understand what it's like, but I can witness somewhat of what it's like. So go on.
I got that. Thank you. So back to the RV, the nature becomes inaccessible to people that have a disability. Mm-hmm. And anyone that loves nature and has been out to nature knows what nature is: a healer.
Yes.
Nature opens the heart. It opens the mind. It disappears noise like nothing else, I think. Mm-hmm. You don't have to meditate nature. You just got to be in nature. Just go out, walk into a forest, and everything, it's like, and the noise goes away.
The walking in the forest is the meditation.
It is, right. You don't have to actively, you just go stand in the water, take a swim somewhere, go to the beach.
Listen to the wind and the crickets and the coyotes. Yeah.
And And that is off limits to people in wheelchairs and disabilities. And another thing that I discovered was that in the United States, you can't rent a wheelchair accessible RV. So
At all.
at all.
Because you
yeah.
tried.
I tried, yeah, for years, and it drove me nuts. And I decided that I'm gonna buy one. And I got like a relatively old one that's in really great shape. And we renovated it, and it looks incredible now that we did it. I left it here at Jeff's property, and it's been being worked on for the last, 2 months?
Yeah.
And
well, since my birthday, September 10th, and now we're at November 8th.
Yeah. So about 2 months, and you and Christine have been, everything wouldn't happen without you. So thank you. And
you're welcome.
And
it's a privilege.
Thank you.
It was a great way to contribute.
And we're going to start renting it out to people.
Yeah.
And we're going to start getting people. What are you moved by?
I'm just moved by what an honor it is to be able to contribute to you, and to contribute to this vision of bringing nature. That's something that's so important. It's the reason that I moved here where we are. I wanted to be closer to nature. Now I live in the forest, it's what more could you want? I'm moved by the fact that I have the opportunity in helping you renovate this RV to contribute to the lives of people who wouldn't get the opportunity, to experience something that's so near and dear to my heart, and is something that is so critically important to my beliefs in who I am as a man and as a person on this planet, and is such a deep, fundamental part of how I relate to God and this experience of life. And so it's a real honor to be able to be of service in this way to you, and have my wife really, she really was in charge of the way that thing looks. You guys together, but she was, I was more the logistical guy, figuring out where we can put it and dealing with neighbors that were challenging. We had one challenging neighbor I mentioned in a previous podcast who was like, "You parked it right in front of my windows, and I can't say, how could you? Why didn't you even think about that?" And then, to make a long story short, in the interest of keeping peace with my neighbors who were going to live there next door to me forever, I got where she was coming from, and I was able to communicate with her like, "Hey, I really get that. I did that," and et cetera. I did a little bit of the work that you described, and I really did. And her husband was also like, "Hey, I really appreciate how gracious you're being about this," because he knew that I could be a real jerk, and I could have pushed back, and I could have fought for it, and I would have won. But it wasn't that important to me to sour the relationship. And then we moved it to another spot, and then eventually that spot didn't work out because the garbage trucks couldn't get through. And then finally I came up with a third solution to put it somewhere else close by, and that worked out great. So I was in charge of all of that. It was, and Cody Westbrook and Nick Buck, who were the guys that actually did the actual work. God bless both awesome of those guys. Men. Really, really exceptional work. So much integrity with those two guys. Really cared about it, and it shows in the end product. So yeah, so I thank you for giving me the privilege of being of service to you and those who will get to experience this RV.
So that's the main thing now. We're going to finish up with this RV. We're going to wrap this project up. And it's going to be based down in LA because the weather there is always good year round. And it'll be like the hub's going to be down there. Anyone that has like a severe disability, or even not a severe disability, they have some kind of mobility issue and they're in a chair and they want to be in nature. They can come with their family or with their friends. They can take it out. It has a wheelchair lift, up into it. It's inside. It's designed in like a really open spacey kind of way. It has a roll-in shower. It has a toilet. It has the beds. Everything is set up in a way that it's super comfortable, as comfortable as can be, with running water and with hot water and with it's just a generator and it's just awesome, and people can rent it for a week and go out and wake up in a forest, wake up by a lake, wake up and have a campfire with their friends. And it's just a freaking miracle, this thing. I can't wait for that to happen. Especially, and I'll say, especially for veterans. So many veterans, injured veterans, people who suddenly found themselves in the middle of life disabled and lost touch with who they were.
Yeah.
which is a story in their head, by the way. They're still same human being, just in a different body. And I think that going out and having an
Same body with
experience like
different
this,
capabilities.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And they can go out and rediscover that, holy shit, I can actually have a great life, And let's talk about families that have children that are born with all kinds of degenerative diseases or whatnot. And how can kids, could you imagine, like, those kids they barely get to play baseball or sports. They don't get to roll around in the dirt and the grass. They don't get all that. They're on asphalt and concrete all the time. What an experience to have those parents take those kids out into nature and go see the world. Anyway, I think it's like the vision is to have one of these at least in every state in the nation, and that we see these human beings who just, the circumstances of life are what they are, and they kind of physically aren't in the same place as everyone else, and that we give them opportunity to just, breathe, look up, see that the world is beautiful, see that it's possible. That's what I'm about. So I'm excited, and I really thank you for being my partner in that.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. For people who are at home listening and that are interested in maybe renting it or exploring something with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Okay, so the way people can reach out is you go to the website. It's accessible-rv-rental.com.
Yeah.
And
that'll be in the show notes too.
Shoot me an email there. I'll have pictures up. When you when you fill out the form, the email will get to me, and whatever we can do, we'll make it work. Including if you have any friends who are veterans and you'd want to get your buddies together and go out on an RV trip together with your veteran friend, then we can do this nonprofit thing where the money can be tax deductible for you, because we'll funnel it through a veteran nonprofit.
And that's a lot of the goal too, is to also give people the opportunity to contribute to something.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
Can you stop crying already?
I can't. All right.
What's wrong with
if
you?
You know me. Come on. I cry a lot. All right. I think crying is power. Crying is very powerful. I do actually believe that. I think crying is one of the most powerful things we can do, because it demonstrates that you're alive and you're connected to something that's moving you. That's beyond your programming.
I'm going to do that more.
Beyond being the moth. Yeah. But no, I'm really moved by it, because the whole vision of it is so beautiful, and the opportunity for people to contribute to that vision and giving people that opportunity, and then just seeing what happened. I'm really excited about the results that people get and just the experience that people get, For a lot of folks, I imagine it's going to be a highlight for their life, going out and doing this kind of adventure. So
unforgettable memories will be created by this thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, look, we don't have to talk about the war in Israel, but you are going there, and you are from there, and you did serve in the military there. One thing that I learned from you during this trip, which relates also to the election and everything that we've discussed, is that there's nothing I can do about it, and that's okay. Like, something that I realized, because I, as you know, and I've spoken on the podcast before, I want peace in the world. I really desire peace, and I really see that so much war contributes to so much more war and so much trauma for people and their family lines and their ancestral lines, and it also feeds this greedy beast called the military industrial complex, and selling weapons and blowing people up and not caring about the price of human life. Like, I hate all of that stuff, and there's nothing I can do about it. Not sitting here. I mean, I could talk about it, and that's valuable, but I don't gain any purchase by being attached to the result and looking down upon the war and what's happening over there politically. All I can do is just really pray for peace, and pray that people figure out how to listen in the way that we have been discussing. If we could do that over there and everywhere, we would for sure have peace. But right now, we are where we are.
What we can do is we can traffic in an extraordinary conversation. So when someone says, we gotta kill all the whatever group of people, yeah, you can ask yourself, what would be an extraordinary thing for me to say in this moment that might open up some kind of new possibility for that person, rather than just, again, being like a moth and just going, yeah, you're right, because it's all the same garbage all the time. It's just boring. It's like watching the same damn movie, like a bad one too. It's like a really bad movie.
Yeah.
So what can I do, or who can I be, or what can I say that'll be extraordinary? And just to stand there, to hold that space, to hold it. What if this whole thing about wars going on, all this, what if that is actually a thing that's a good thing that's going in the right direction? What if peace is like, on the board game, on like the Monopoly board game, it's like 4 squares ahead. We're just like 4 squares before the go past go, collect $200. But we just don't see it.
Yeah.
All we're afraid of is I'm going to land on Broadway and then I'm going to get whacked with the, $400 fine. But it's right before the go past to collect $200. What if it's something that's needed? I don't know. What if, because I don't know, the old story isn't really serving me. And I think overall we're headed in the right direction. It's not on the timeline that we want it. We want it now. I want peace right now. I want it yesterday.
Me too.
Yeah. I want kids to stop suffering. I do. Absolutely. I want that. And I want it now. But it's like, sometimes it doesn't work that way. And so I'm actually very optimistic. A, because I choose to be, and B, because I think when we look at the bigger picture, I actually think that things are kind of headed in the right direction. If you would have asked, especially in the Middle East with the Abraham Accords, if you would have said that there are El Al flights flying over Saudi Arabia to land in the United Arab Emirates, if you would have said that 15 years ago, it was an unfathomable thought. Unfathomable. No such thing. Today, Israel has peace with Morocco, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, like half of the Arab world.
Which is a huge improvement. Yeah. Okay.
It was never like that before. Never.
Yeah.
And not only that, the Arab world is excited about it. There's huge amounts of money that's going between those nations, like helping each other, building each other up. And and the killing sucks and it's horrible, and that's probably what we're gonna have to deal with until further notice. And God willing, we'll keep on holding the space. And only one thing I can say, and I can only say this about the Israelis. Okay, I was a soldier in the IDF. Every Israeli who you've ever met most likely was a soldier in the IDF. In the media, there's propaganda, like big propaganda all the time, that the Israelis are committing war crimes and the genocide and the raping women and pillaging and all this stuff. Go to your Israeli friends and ask them, is that what you guys did when you were in the military? And you will never hear anything but no. We were all there. It's like we're all like the people. I was like the guy that was doing the so-called dirty work. I was boots on the ground. I was inside. We would never allow for if we ever saw another colleague of ours doing something like that, that guy would sit in jail. It just doesn't. That stuff doesn't happen. If it does, it's like an outlier. Like God knows, but an outlier is with everything. So, like, actually go talk with your Israeli friends who are actually boots on the ground and ask them what their experience is. And don't believe everything you hear in the media.
And don't believe everything you hear in the media, just generally speaking. Well, that's great. And also, I want to honor you for being a warrior, in that fight and doing your duty and paying the price that you've had to pay, and also being the man that you've become. I really want to acknowledge you for being a voice for transformation in the world, no matter where you're sitting. And also, like, honestly, I'm more hopeful about what's going on over there, having had this part of the conversation, and actually the entire conversation. And I'm more hopeful also knowing that whenever this current situation ends, you're going to be there.
I will.
And you'll probably have the opportunity to create and manifest conversations like the conversations that we've been having that might help to actually heal the situation in the future. And guess what? I'll come over and help have those conversations.
Love it.
Beautiful.
It would be my honor.
Ron, for you, what is sacred and what is insane?
That's the question. What's for me is sacred? What for me is sacred and what's insane?
Yeah. What is sacred and what is insane?
Human beings are sacred and human beings are insane.
Beautiful. Great. All right, everybody. If you want to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast. Much love. See you next time.